The Royals had interest in Bryan Reynolds before. Will they again this offseason? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned in to another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. And you can listen to us on wherever you download your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners, we bring you episodes 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes in length. And during the season, we also have the Locked On Royals postcast, which is hosted by Chance Lebo, and he'll go live for about 15 to 20 minutes after the games. Before we get started, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. We teased it a little bit yesterday in going over another trade target for the Royals. And, from time to time, we are going to bring up old names that had previously been linked to the Royals. And one of those old names would be Bryan Reynolds of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, I would say of the list we've already given, the players on that list, he falls around the 7 to 10 range in terms of overall interest that I would have. But I always try to take that into account where the Royals have had interest in the past, and then it comes back up again either the next year or the year after that. I tend to listen to a lot of those J.J. Picollo interviews right after a deal has happened. And more often than not, you will hear J.J. say something along the lines of, well, we've liked him for a long time. And I feel with Bryan Reynolds, if there was a scenario in which they acquired him, you just have to go back to last deadline. And the Royals were one of those teams that were linked to Bryan Reynolds. And it was more of a Pirates thing than it was the Royals or anybody else. They were a team that absolutely should have been in sell mode. They didn't sell off as many pieces as they would have liked to. But Bryan Reynolds is a fan favorite. He's a longtime Pirate. He's signed through 2030. And that contract does, have some things that, get in the way of negotiations, just because, it's a player that maybe is no longer worth that type of money. Maybe some teams don't want to pay him through 2030. You'd much rather take on a player with multiple years of control that's younger and cheaper, or you'd rather take on somebody that maybe you're just paying for this year. But Bryan Reynolds does make sense for the Royals in a couple of different ways. He bounces around the field. He's a switch hitter, and he's been a league average bat or better the last 5 to 6 seasons. And that's something for the outfield, as we know with the Royals, that has completely eluded them. Now, what it would take, I compare Bryan Reynolds and Taylor Ward a lot. Now, Taylor Ward is the better bat, and I also believe would be a better fit for the Royals. But when negotiating, the Angels have, always tried to ask for the moon. And I believe that goes for all teams out there that have inquired about Taylor Ward. The Angels just put the asking price too high. Now Taylor Ward is entering the final year before free agency, so that price is naturally going to go down. Bryan Reynolds is one of those players that has been with one organization for a long, long time. You could always count on him to be in the lineup. You could always count on him to produce. And yes, last year, it was a little bit under what he usually does, but I thought he finished the year rather strong. Whereas at the deadline, he was in the midst of like a 2 for 30 slump. I mean, whatever value he had, whatever interest he had, it probably went down a little bit based on the numbers that he was producing right around the trade deadline. But I look at Pittsburgh going into this offseason and where they are. They are not going to be a competitive team in their division. They are not going to be a competitive team in the National League, period. They do have the best pitcher in the National League in Paul Skeens, and maybe the best pitcher, period, depending if you view Tarek Skubal, Garrett Crochet as lesser than Paul Skeens. There's absolutely arguments to be made for all three of those guys. Or maybe you want to throw Shohei Ohtani's name in there, though he didn't really spend that much time pitching this year. But they have Paul Skeens. They have O'Neal Cruz, who's a young, talented player, but also is coming off a year in which he hit 200. They've had some high-round picks, some top prospects, but nothing has really come together yet in Pittsburgh. I hate it when the Pirates aren't very good because it's a gorgeous ballpark, one of the more beautiful ones in all of baseball. It's a historic franchise. I believe their jerseys are top tier, and it's a fun place, and they're fun games just to watch. But the Pirates are not there right now, and that's why I could imagine them this offseason more so committing to that rebuild, but also understanding that if you commit to a full rebuild, well, when Paul Skeens is going to be a free agent, he may not come back to Pittsburgh. Because the years that he was great, the years that he was winning Cy Young after Cy Young, you were not trying to build a winner around him. It's why with the Royals and Bobby Witt Jr., a big part of that extension was, I will sign here if we can, build a competitive winner. And I'm not saying that Bobby told that to the front office. I don't mean that at all. I'm more so saying what we saw afterwards, what the Royals did following that signing is, why a lot of players do sign that big-time extension in small markets. You got to see some effort from the front office, and the Royals certainly put in that effort in bringing in Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha and making some trades in the last 2 years at the deadline. They're trying to remain competitive and make it enticing to come to Kansas City. And so for the Pirates, I don't know if their ownership thinks that same way of, yeah, we should try to spend money even if we're not expecting to be competitive. We should try to build a winner through free agency or through some minor trades here and there. The Royals went from a 106-loss team to a team that made it to the ALDS the next year. It is possible if you sign the right guys, but you have to have the right scouts in place. You have to have the right GM in place. And with Pittsburgh, I feel a lot of that is very, very unknown. So when it comes to Bryan Reynolds, does he fit their window? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. He's 30 years old. He's signed till he's 35 or 36. And maybe you could look at it if you're a Pirates front office member and say his best years are behind him. Now is the time to unload him. But if you do that, you are trading away a beloved player, somebody that was willing to sign an extension when the Pirates were not competitive whatsoever. Sometimes that can reflect poorly on your organization or reflect poorly to the stars of that team. Because Bryan Reynolds, I don't know much about Pittsburgh's clubhouse, but he may be just beloved by everybody. Coaches love him, teammates love him, and they want him to be there and retire a Pirate. But from a baseball standpoint and bettering your team, if you went to Kansas City and the Royals said, we need that type of bat in our outfield, we feel that in that lineup, he can be much better than he was last year. And I get it. We've had some people in the comments say, well, Jack is saying go after this guy who's looking for a bounce back year, and he doesn't want a lot of bounce back years. My bounce back year is more so toward players that were ghastly last year. I mean, Jack Caglione was ghastly at the plate. That's a bounce back year if he is a league average bat. Bryan Reynolds had an OPS plus of 99, so 1 point below the league average. And as I said, he's been an above average bat the last 5 seasons. So if he gives you that again, depending on what you gave up, I'm not sure that it is seen as a terrible move. Now, if he comes to Kansas City and hits 198 and he's not that great of a defender, he doesn't get on base a lot. I know that he is prone to striking out a bit more, maybe more than you would like. But I really feel for the outfield, because he's a switch hitter, it gives you that flexibility. You could make a trade like that. And the only reason I bring up his name today is that the Royals had interest before. And going into the offseason, as much as I would like to bring up every name that our commenters bring up of, oh, this guy here, we are just throwing names at a dartboard. Not saying you're the only ones doing it. I'm doing it as well. I've brought up names that really have no business being on our episode, but they're free agents or they could be trade pieces. Bryan Reynolds is one of the few that we know the Royals do have interest in, or did have interest in, I should say. And probably just from a negotiation standpoint and hearing another team out, I'd imagine they'll give them a call again and see what it would take. Maybe the Pirates have to pay a large chunk of that salary, but that means you have to give up a better prospect or maybe a player with multiple years of control. They need offensive help. So when we were talking about the starting pitching yesterday and pitchers they could move, the Pirates actually have a good collection of starting pitchers and young ones at that. They need offensive help, which also goes against them trading Bryan Reynolds, but simply just bringing up names. As you know, our offseason content goes, it's not always the best name. It's not always the perfect fit, but we're going to talk about it anyway. And for a guy like Bryan Reynolds, the Royals at one point did have interest. Do you believe Bryan Reynolds is a name that the Royals should look into? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. When we come back, let's talk about this division. Is the AL Central more winnable now than it was at this point last year? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about FanDuel, also our title sponsor today. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. For my pick, I'm going to go to the Chiefs and Bills on Sunday. I will take the under on points scored in this one, and I will take both Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen to have under their passing yard total. Want to dive into this division a little bit, the AL Central, and where everything stands and how these teams may look going into 2026. You've got the reigning American League Central champs and the Cleveland Guardians, which is just weird to say considering the Tigers led that division for the entirety of the season, or almost the entirety of the season, until Cleveland had a ridiculous turnaround in September and the Tigers had a catastrophic collapse. When it was all said and done, though, the Tigers were the ones to eliminate the Guardians in the postseason and then would go on to be eliminated by the Mariners, who then were eliminated by the Blue Jays, who we're going to talk about in the final segment. But I have this feeling that the American League Central is more winnable going into 26 than it was in 2025, and for a couple of different reasons. Going into 2025, you had the Tigers, who were coming off an appearance in the ALDS. You had the reigning champions and the Guardians going to the ALCS before falling to the Yankees. And then you had the Royals going to the ALDS and falling to the Yankees as well. And then you had the Twins, who were in it in September, and the White Sox, who had one of the worst records that we've ever seen in the sport. But still, going into the offseason, you had four teams that you still felt like had a pretty good chance of competing going into next year. We felt the Tigers would be a little bit more aggressive in the offseason. We certainly thought that for the Royals. We knew the Guardians were not going to be as aggressive, but you never can count them out, no matter what their roster looks like. And for Minnesota was not viewed like they are now. They just hired Derek Shelton to replace Rocco Baldelli. A lot of Twins fans are not very thrilled with that. The White Sox are on the come up, I would say, but still more than a few years away, I would say, from being a true contender in the division. So one of the main reasons why the Central is a little bit more winnable going in the next year as opposed to last year was that you've got two teams that are going to be close to 100 losses next year in your division. Maybe they're in the 90s. That would be another improvement for the White Sox. There's a chance, too, the Twins are the worst team in the division next year. And you keep in mind that you played both of those teams, a combined 26 times? So you've got a lot of familiarity with them. Or is it 10 or 13 games? I can't quite remember. You're going to play anywhere from 20 to 23 games combined against those teams next year. Then you look at the top dogs in the division. I wouldn't really call the Royals a middle of the or a top dog team. I would say they're more middle of the pack. The top dogs in this division were the Cleveland Guardians and the Detroit Tigers, and it was 6 games clear of the Royals in the division. So I can't call them one of the top contenders just yet, but still include them in this conversation of winning this division, of competing in this division. Cleveland is going to do what they've done every single offseason, which is not spend. They may make a heads-up trade or two where they trade an offensive player that you may think would be a threat for next year, but then they bring in pitchers or they bring in another bat that turns out to be a stud for them the next handful of years. Still, Cleveland had the good fortune next year really go their way. Not to say they weren't a good team. I mean, they won this division and had an unbelievable month when it mattered most. Still, it's an offense that's not going to light it up. It's not going to be an offense that drives fear into you. The Tigers have the best overall team in this division, and they're going to be coming into a season where they got to capitalize with Tarek Skubal while they can. The reports out there were that, the Tigers are nowhere close to what Tarek Skubal wants. And if they give him that type of money, it may lock you up a little bit. Well, that's a lot of money toward one player, and then you're not going to be spending money elsewhere on that roster. So the Tigers are not in a make it or break it year, but it is close to it. They have to be expected to win this division. They have to be expected to go deep into October and probably get to the World Series. So I would anticipate them making a play on Alex Bregman. I would anticipate them making a play on a couple of starters. I mean, really trying to go all in to ensure winning this division. So that works against my argument of, is this division more winnable? I feel that Detroit, even though they didn't win it this past year, I'm not going to completely neglect the part that they led that division for 85 to 90% of the year and had a comfortable lead. They are still the best team in this division, and I believe they are going to be one of, if not the most aggressive team in the American League in trying to add talent. But there's always things that can go wrong. Maybe Detroit is hyper-focused on keeping Skubal here, that they're not able to sign some of those big free agents. I mean, I would say Alex Bregman's a good fit. I also thought that was going to be the case last year. He's going to be asking for maybe north of $30 million a year. If the Tigers do that, even though there's no salary cap in baseball, it makes it increasingly unlikely that they don't sign Tarek Skubal back when he's a free agent. So there will be a little bit of unknown parts of the Tigers' offseason plan. There will be some randomness, I feel, to their offseason and the moves we see them make, because they do have to pick a path, right? I feel they do have to pick one direction here. Are they going to keep their roster intact? It's a young, talented roster and build with Skubal. Or are they going to say, we can't fall short again? We have to win this division. We have to be the 1 seed. And we do need to make sure that our rotation is set, our bullpen is set, and our lineup set. Every team tries to do that, but very few actually try to go out there and spend the money and make things happen. But if you are the Royals, which we talk about the Royals on this podcast, of course, you've got teams like the Twins and White Sox that you can beat up on a little bit. It's still baseball, and anybody can beat anybody on any given day, but those are favorable matchups for you. You need to have a winning record and probably more than a few games over 500 against both of those teams. Cleveland, you just have to be better against. There's no other way to put it. Cleveland has been a team that you have struggled with time and time again. I know in 2024, they had a winning record over the Guardians, hence why I believe they made the postseason. You got to take advantage of those type of matchups so that when you play Detroit, you are able to maybe just deal with a 500 record or a few games under. You have to take care of business against the rest of the teams in your division. And I believe the Royals, if they are as aggressive as I believe they will be, they're going to have a good chance to do it. But you need to throw your weight around with Detroit a little bit. If you want to put yourself above Cleveland, if you don't want to have to worry about those matchups, because at the end of the day, Cleveland, as great as they are, and as much as I respect them as an organization, I don't view them like I do Philadelphia or the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Blue Jays. They've never had that great of an offense, I should say, they never really had that great of an offense last year. And even the year before that, there were a lot of holes in that lineup, and they don't even have the same rotation they used to have, or the bullpen, I should say. But they have a fantastic manager in Stephen Vogt. They have a group that is really great chemistry-wise, and they're going to win over 90-plus games if it all comes together. But the way you can prevent that is making sure your roster, top to bottom, is just much better than they are. Yeah, there's going to be some odd things that happen, some bad luck for you. It always feels that way with the Royals when they play the Guardians. But one way to really make sure you feel good about those matchups against the other three teams in the division, make your roster head and shoulders better than the rest. You already are over Minnesota and Chicago. Now the goal will be better than Cleveland top to bottom and throw your weight around with the Detroit Tigers. But I really do believe this division could be more winnable going into this year than last year because there's one more team that is probably closer to 100 losses than they are 90 wins. Do you believe the Central is more winnable now than it was last year? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. When we come back, we're going to talk about the World Series. The Blue Jays take 2 out of 3 in LA. Now they'll go back to Toronto up 3-2, just one win away from the World Series. That's coming up next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find us on wherever you listen to your podcast. Want to tell you about the final sponsor today in PrizePicks. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates. That includes California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, for $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it is good to be right. Out of nowhere, I would say, the Blue Jays have put themselves in the driver's seat to win the World Series in 2025. And first and foremost, I got to apologize for not giving them enough credit, number one, all postseason long. When we did our predictions, I didn't see the Blue Jays getting out of the ALDS. I thought that whoever they matched up against, whether it was Boston or New York, they were going to get beat. Then when they got to the ALCS, I thought, well, the Mariners, they just seem like this team of destiny. And I honestly feel that with their rotation, with their lineup, they're going to be able to get past Toronto, who still didn't have Bo Bichette at the time. And then they get to the World Series. They go into 7 games with the Mariners. They have the dramatic win. They match up with the Dodgers, who had lost one time in the postseason. And that one loss was against a lot of people's favorite to win the World Series in the Philadelphia Phillies. So when we did that breakdown of the World Series, I had said that, no, I'm just not going to bet against the Dodgers. And I still can't pull the plug on it. I mean, they are the Los Angeles Dodgers when it's all said and done, and they found a way to win at least one of the games in Toronto. But sometimes baseball has a way of just telling you when somebody really is the team of destiny. I thought for a while it was Toronto. I thought a few years back it was Arizona. Like, if they get this far, they're probably going to win this thing, aren't they? Now, they have that way of showing you it, but you also have to be smart enough to know who they're actually showing you is the team of destiny. And we fall victim to it a lot. I'm sure people back in 2014 felt like the Royals were the team of destiny. If they're going to get here, if they're going to have Game 7 in Kansas City, they're going to win it. It doesn't always happen that way. The team of destiny was the Giants, who had an even worse record than the Royals going into the World Series. They were a lower wild card team. Or actually, that was back when the All-Star game still mattered for home field. So I believe that the Giants did have a better record, but they were the lowest seed on the National League side. The next year, the Mets were seen as that team of destiny. Not quite the Miracle Mets, because they had a lot of talent and more talent than the Miracle Mets did, but they get to the World Series. The Royals had already been there. This is the year the Mets do it. The Royals beat them in 5 games. And so when it comes to the Toronto Blue Jays, maybe it's because not a lot of people took them that seriously. I mean, they were the 1 seed in the American League. They were the 1 seed in the American League. They had banged up players. They were starting a guy in Game 1 of the World Series that was in low A to begin the year. Trey Savage. I mean, and then last night, he strikes out 12, a record for a rookie starting pitcher in the World Series. He strikes out 12 at Dodger Stadium to go up 3-2. It's a remarkable story. It's what makes Toronto so likable in this postseason race. George Springer has the dramatic home run in Game 7, and you would have thought 1 game earlier, 2 games earlier, when Eugenio Suarez has the grand slam in Game 5, that made the Mariners the team of destiny. It feels that everything that the Blue Jays have done, I have almost suppressed and felt that these other teams have just emerged as the favorite. But when I got to the World Series, I tried to take out this weird feel in baseball. I tried to take out the weird part about baseball where, the baseball gods are going to impact this one, or team of destiny talk, all of that. I tried to push that away and go, don't worry about it for this matchup because it's the LA Dodgers. It's the LA Dodgers who have steamrolled everybody to get to this point. And now Toronto, who had to go into 7 games with Seattle, they get to take on a rested Dodgers team who made the Brewers look like a AAA affiliate. They made the number 1 seed on the National League side look like they had no business belonging in October. So with that knowledge, and you can go back and find the episode, I don't remember exactly which one it is, which probably works out better for me, but I said, I'm not going to overthink this one. I'm done betting against the Dodgers. What I should have said is I need to be done betting against the Blue Jays because I picked the Blue Jays to lose in pretty much every round, including the World Series. And it's still possible they do. We might get Game 7. The Dodgers might come out with their backs against the wall, which hasn't happened, by the way, since last year in the NLDS when they were taking on the Padres. And I've gone on record of saying if the Dodgers, were eliminated by the Padres in that point, I feel the whole direction of how, the Dodgers have been these last 2 years would have been drastically altered. I mean, the Padres had them on the ropes, and their ability to come back just catapulted them into the World Series, and they never looked back. Sometimes when your back's against the wall and you overcome it, it just sets you up for the rest of the postseason. And for the Dodgers, if they would have lost to their division rival then, I believe they have that tremendous weight on their shoulders of, you have Ohtani, you have all these MVPs, and you got bounced in the NLDS. Shows you how hard it is to win in October. But with winning the World Series, they took that momentum, that confidence, carried it into this year, and really didn't see a threat until they got to the Blue Jays. And I believe it's how their offense is constructed. Not only do they have their big hitters up top with Vladdy Jr. and George Springer when he's healthy. Now they got Bo Bichette back. Dalton Varsho's had a couple of big hits in this series, but it's the Ernie Clements of the world. It's the Alejandro Kirks that have been so tough to get out and make that Blue Jays lineup relentless. And the Dodgers hadn't really seen that so far in the postseason. They held the Brewers to an OPS as a team under 300. Think about how absurd that is. You combine your on base and slug, and it's still under 300. That's how good the Dodgers rotation had been. But the Blue Jays are going out there and teeing off on Snell. They're teeing off on Ohtani. The only guy they haven't teed off on is Yamamoto, who, surprise, surprise, is going to be starting Game 6. I'm hoping, for a baseball standpoint, we get this thing to a 7th game because there's really nothing better in the sport than Game 7 of the World Series. And I love it even more that it's going to take place in Toronto. But this Blue Jays team, you want to talk about somebody that has earned the respect of everybody. I don't care if you hate Toronto and you don't like their players and you don't like Springer and you don't like Vladdy Jr. From a baseball standpoint, this is remarkable. The journey they've had. Yes, to the 1 seed. I'm not talking about them being a spunky little underdog that have found their way in the World Series. They are a force. They are a true alpha. They demolished the Yankees, had double-digit runs in 2 of those games or 3 of those games, and the only game they lost, they led 6-0 at some point. And then in the ALCS, you get knocked to the mat by the Mariners, and you have grown men crying in Seattle, which, I'm all for. I think it's great when you see fans get that emotional because the Mariners are a team that have been cursed. And every, part in your body would have said, that was it. That's the signature moment. The Mariners are going to the World Series. It's undoubtedly going to happen. Even when the Mariners went up 2-0 and then jumped out early in Game 3, it's like Blue Jays are done. They're not going to be moving on this time. And they overcome that. And they win Game 6. And then they win Game 7 after trailing 3-1. They seem to be the team of destiny. And if they get it done, I got nothing but respect because they have had a remarkable run in October. And they would be the team, the first team, the only team to slay the beast that is the Ohtani-led Dodgers. Nobody's done it yet in the postseason. Padres were the closest. Nobody else had them on the ropes. That's crazy to think about, that only one time in these last 2 years, the Dodgers have played in a true elimination game. And they're going to have that tomorrow night when the Blue Jays try to wrap up the season with a Game 6 win in the World Series. Do you see the Blue Jays getting it done, or do you believe the Dodgers will fight back, force a Game 7, and win in Toronto? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. That'll do it for another episode of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, it'll be a Mailbag Friday, so get your questions in. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.